I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh, eat well, and grow strong. Tomorrow I'll be at the table when company comes. No one will dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too sing America. Anyone like Langston Hughes? I do. That was Langston. Everyone's like, what is that? All right, so I thank you all for having me today. Unfortunately, couldn't make this happen sooner, but I'm really excited to be here. So I really would like to give you a little insight into who I am, a little bit deeper than the bio there. I start a lot of my presentations with a lot of spoken word. I mix in a lot of conversation about my history and where I came from, so I thought it would be really cool to share a little bit of what I've learned about Mill Creek. Did you all know that this was purchased at one point? This area was about 800 acres of farmland, and there was apple farming and pears and whatnot. Can you believe that? Did you? You all knew that. Like, we do. We know our history. So before that, though, in the 1970s, or just at that point when the community was largely developed, planned community. Before that, though, you had the remnants of what they might call an ag community. And so I just came off of being president of the National Rural Economic Developers Association, and I thought about the fact that I came from Washington, D.C. I came from public housing with no yard space, bus transportation everywhere. I used to get up at 4 a.m. To catch a bus to go to school in Maryland to get a good education. And the bad days were when you got up late and had to chase the bus, because I actually did that. And that's how I broke all those records. Had to prepare myself for that level. But today, I'm just pleased to be here because I have the distinct pleasure of running the Economic Alliance in Snohomish County, which has been an amazing, quick year. I can't believe how quickly it's gone, and I actually feel like I haven't met maybe 60% of the people in person yet. So that's an interesting dynamic for all of us. But in this next year, I think we will all get to meet a little bit more frequently. And I think most of us have just had about enough of not meeting. So I'm really excited about that. I wanted to also highlight just another piece of who we are. And so what you'll see on this presentation is just some brief pictures and images of what we are doing. I'll talk a little bit about the concepts that we've brought out of 2021, going into 2022. Hopeful that we'll be able to launch some of these things. Now, we were pretty much dormant as far as in-person meetings. We had a sprinkling and a smattering of events. And if you see the visual here, and you may not be able to see it very clearly, but that new emblem up top, that's our new logo. And I don't know how many of you were a part of Economic Alliance before, but we had kind of the regional colors with the Seahawk colors. So it's shifted that location. You can also see that our logo now has the location symbol and then the mountain. So our vision is going into 2022 is that opportunity lives here in Snohomish County. That each of our chamber organizations, which is about 23 actually throughout the county, that together we are stronger than we are apart. And I have one of the best conversations I've ever had in my short stint here with your chamber leadership. And we talked a lot about collaboration, about how we can be resilient together and how we can be nimble, and that Economic Alliance can actually amplify the work that you're doing so that you aren't strained to do that work. And so we are developing what we have now is called a regional chamber group. We actually met this morning. I did not see Mill Creek on there, so I imagine you all have stuff to plan and things to do. But there was a group of folks there just kind of planning and engaging on what are the next steps. And so today I just want to give you a little snapshot into what we've learned and talk a little bit about the actual organizations and industry levels that we see focusing on Snohomish County. So first and foremost, you all have seen these names before, I'm assuming, right? Mm-hmm. You've seen most of them. It's been kind of a natural maturation process in the county. I could say aerospace up here 1,000 times, and many of you would already know what that means. You know the industries that are tied to it. But now, because of the pandemic, we're seeing a shift. And with this transition means that our industries, our emerging industries, are changing. A lot of us are comfortable with the normal things that we've already operated in, especially when it comes to business. We know where our clientele is, we know the basic ins and outs, and then we had a pandemic which created an opportunity for us to look at other things and look at a different perspective. The same is true with nonprofits and other organizations. How do we become nimble enough to remain resilient? What we've seen is a shift from just aerospace into other avenues. And manufacturing's been probably the heaviest hit industry in our region and our communities, but now it's also the most transitional. It's shifting, it's changing. Let's see if this works.
Pointed at this right here, at the projector.
I didn't know where I was pointing.
Yeah.
Someone in the audience. But at any rate, these are just some of the key emerging industries that we've kind of zeroed in on. So our job is to not only be the countywide chamber, but also to help land and retain businesses. And so what we've seen is actually in December, we had the largest month on par just this last year with, I would say we were at about 25 or 26 leads. So everybody know what leads are, right? For the most part, these are potential businesses looking in Snohomish County to land here or expand here. There are RFPs from the State Department of Commerce, RFPs from international spaces, and what have you. They land at Economic Alliance. We sift through those things. We keep it internal. We reach out to your community. We reach out to other communities to say, hey, they want 2 or 3 acres, or they want this building or that, and they plan to bring 100 jobs or 1,000 jobs. Do you want us to submit on your behalf? So that's the internal process that takes place. That is a huge piece to who we are as the countywide economic development engine. With that though, we've seen engineered wood modular construction. How many of you own a home in this room? Most of us. How many of you recently purchased a home in the last year? None of you, lucky. So I moved from Omaha technically not until June. And I was flying back and forth before that time looking for housing. And realized that my little, actually 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath home in Omaha, western Omaha, Nebraska, which was, and I'll be very transparent here, was $189,000. Backyard, big backyard, I can put a hoop in the back. Big front yard, you can put up big trees and whatnot. Like, man, this is the life. And then I accepted a role. I was really excited. I flew out here in December of last year. Everything was shut down. I didn't even know people existed out here for my interview. There's no one here. And they put me up in a hotel in Bellevue. I don't know why they put me up in a hotel, but they did. And I thought, man, Snohomish County is awesome in Bellevue. And then I realized I had to drive maybe 30 minutes up to do my interview. And I walked in and I saw people, and then I saw people on screen too. And they offered me the job, and go back to my family and say, hey, we're moving. You guys excited? Yeah. What kind of home are we buying? How much is it going to be? And then we saw the sticker shock. And I thought, okay, so it might be a while before we buy a home. And it wasn't just that the home price, it was the fact that the inventory was sapped. And you have people practically on their knees begging for people to let them buy their home. Please, please. I put 2 kids through college. Listen, people are putting all kinds of stuff in their letters, hoping to trigger a response. And you know what? What we realized is the day that we saw a home was not the day to think that you're going to have time to be excited about it or think about it. That's the day to decide right there whether or not you're making an offer, whether or not you're going to do a 20-page paper on why they should sell you the home. And I think we missed out on at least 25 homes that way.
Wow.
And then we got lucky and we ended up in Snohomish. And there was a family moving to Nashville. Older couple, I won't say older, seasoned, I like to say respectfully, right? And so they said, well, we just want to sell to a family. And there was no argument, we didn't have to haggle, we didn't have to go back and forth. Next day, done deal. So I was really lucky because I heard a lot of other stories, and I'm sure many of you have. At any rate, this has been a very interesting year for most of us. And I think our job as the economic development arm in the county is to make sure that we are not only becoming and maintaining the voice of our business community, but we realize that this isn't mutually exclusive. When we're talking about the different industries coming to town or engaging us, it's not just about that company, it's about the people. And sometimes it's very easy to forget that we can't have business without people. But it happens. And if you flick on your screen after this meeting and you go to the legislature and you listen to the bills being passed or pushed forward, the conversation, it gets lost. Who are we focused on? Who is Mill Creek focused on as a chamber? What makes up this chamber is this, the people in the room. Look around you. That's going to be the most important and key thing to the growth of Mill Creek and your chamber. Yes, businesses are largely important, and it is a key to our growth. It's also married and wedded to people. And so what we've done in the last year is think about how do we actively engage both our businesses and our people to promote our future. Simple formula, right? So as you see here, we have plastics recycling, indoor farming is something, but clean energy and tech has grown. Life sciences, huge now. South County and now moving north. But we've also found that not only is it modular construction, but many of you have seen the news on Darrington's project, I hope. So there's a development taking place where they need over 100 staffers throughout the county to go to Switzerland and Germany to help learn how to build these modular wood homes. And it's a huge, huge opportunity for Snohomish County. Now, it's a little different than the traditional modular homes that you see, but we're just seeing a huge innovation piece taking place in our industry, and so I wanted to share a little bit about that. Trying to reimagine how to be resilient and what's taking place in our county is businesses, as yourselves included, we're trying to figure out how to remodel what you're doing. And our job is to make sure that we're educating folks on the opportunities, the resources and services. Right now, there are over 100 business resources in the county. Over 100 centers, organizations that can direct you to help. And I include you all in that space. So what do we do if we're a small business or an entrepreneur with a great idea or expanding our business? You go to that resource place and they give you that list of 100 places to go. It gets really big and explodes. I don't know if I need all of these options. So that's why Mill Creek exists, the chamber. That's why we exist, to say, let's cut some of the fat off of that, right? And select the direct pathway by which you can get your support. In saying that, we know that supply chain disruption has been rampant. We know that if you were shopping online and virtually for Christmas, you were nervous. And you thought, I hope my stuff gets here on time. And if it didn't, you just put a little box under the tree with a sign that says,
DVD.
Yep, that's right. And the kids looked at it and said, what does that mean? Geez, Santa. But beyond that, labor demands. You've had probably 1,000 Zoom meetings about labor sources and demands of workforce, needs and changes. What I actually call this is a new way of thinking about workforce. Oh, but that was for me to stop talking. All right. I didn't know you'd put a mole in the meeting just to make sure that I stopped talking.
That's a $50 donation to, it'd been 100 if we answered.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, in saying that though, I think where we find ourselves is in a space not only where industry is shifting, but those of you, anybody like sports? Anyone like sports? Okay. I'm a big fan of basketball, for sure. I take my kids to work out all the time. They play basketball. I'm a huge basketball fan. What I think we are in right now, when we think of workforce and talent and keeping and maintaining staff, is the same as any one of you being LeBron James and a free agent. Now you have everyone looking at you. You got the Cavaliers, you got all 30 teams looking at you. And they all want you. And they all got benefits packages now. And they all think you are the cream of the crop. That's the industry we're in right now when we think about landing and sustaining talent. If you're not bringing it to the table on some ESPN type level, good luck. If you're not providing childcare services, good luck. If you're not thinking about mental health in the workplace, good luck. If you're not thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, good luck. So if you are not becoming the jack of all trades and master of none as an employer, good luck. All right, this is where we are. You want to get LeBron James? You better have a great benefits package. You better offer a living wage. You better provide some additional services and be willing to listen to your staff. I wanted to talk a little bit about our services as an organization. So we have 6 pillars of focus. I'm moving my big head out of the way, you might be able to see it. Advocacy is one of them. Today we have a staffer that's focused on making sure that the business needs and services are being heard in Olympia. So we are really asking for all of you, if you have concerns, if you have Mill Creek Chamber concerns for the business community, we want to be that voice for you. We want to connect those things together so that there's not just Mill Creek Chamber speaking by itself, but it also has Economic Alliance supporting it. That we are bringing this as one fist to make a loud sound. Additionally, business attraction, as I mentioned, kind of how we operate, we continue to build that space. Now we're at about 16 staffers right now. We also continue to do business retention expansion, and that's where we all can work together. I call it the Blitz. And you'll hear from my VP of Economic Development down the road, Terry Baciuello. The Blitz means that we go into a business and we do it as a full team, and we might do 2 weeks and try to get to 80 businesses or more. And we can't do it alone. So Mill Creek and your chamber, as you volunteer to say, hey, we're gonna do 10 businesses here or there, then we wanna merge those numbers into an aggregate summation so that we can say, okay, this is what's happening in our overall business community. And we're gonna do that on an annual basis. We also put together a data piece that can track that information. So you'll hear more about that. Additionally, quality of life. This is a brand new pillar for us. When I mentioned if you are not able to keep LeBron James, it's for a seminal reason. Quality of life is not mutually exclusive to business advancement. So what we did was we asked our board to approve another pillar, and that is the pillar that we approved in April. This means that diversity, equity, and inclusion is going to be key. It means transportation is going to be key. It means education will be key. So right now, we are launching something that I'll highlight really quickly in a moment as well. Small business and chamber, that's why we're here, to continue to tout what we do, and not only what we do, but what you do as well. And then last but not least, workforce. I kind of highlighted that piece. We really focus on STEM as the key to our talent engagement. That means that our small youth and coming up in education, that we're not just leaving it to chance that they decide to pick a opportunity here in Snohomish County. I want to make sure that there's a pathway and pipeline. All right, so talked a little bit about advancement and efforts. Now I'd like to quickly highlight what we call Snow Co-Creative Haven. This time last year, or actually in December, we submitted to the county a $5 million proposal. The proposal was tied to making sure that the arms and legs of those 100 business resources had a central location for a small or large business with an idea to come and find their pathway. Right now, we believe that an opportunity to create a hub and spoke system benefits our chambers throughout the county as well as ourselves. So in this space, we are proposing that we start to develop this piece. So if anyone wants a copy of this proposal, let me know. We are going to continue to push this, whether or not we get funding directly from the county or somewhere else. We'll continue to build this out. The goal is that if some business wants to develop its idea and concept through Mill Creek, that Mill Creek has the support of not only our staff, but navigators that are building relationships in different spaces. Right now, if you think of CARES funding from last year, a lot of money was left on the table because we didn't have relationships with BIPOC community. We can't have that. How many businesses like to leave money on the table? None, none. So the goal is to make sure that we have pathways with new emerging Americans or existing who want to build those relationships. And we can't do that if we don't have the staffing to build that out. We see this as not only an incubator space, which can be a negative connotation for some people. We want to make sure that a small business has every chance it can in Snohomish County to succeed. This is happening in other places. We're competing already, so it's our job to make sure that we are matching that talent level. You guys remember I said I love basketball. I remember the Sonics running up against the Lakers all the time, the Magic Johnson Lakers. I bet you felt like, man, if we could just get someone of that ilk, maybe we compete on a higher level. Same is true with businesses. We want to make sure that if there's a Magic Johnson out there in their industry, that we find the next one. And we don't need to dig deep to find it because we have it here. And if we think Jack Sikma or someone like that, Sean Kemp or Gary Payton, I love Gary Payton. Probably the name. I used to call myself the Glove back in the day. Nice. But at any rate, this is a model that I'd love to speak deeper on, but I'll hold you on that. Now, another campaign piece is called Snow Code. This launches actually in February. Our job is to connect diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts with all business CEOs throughout the county. Our job is just to help inform and educate, that they sign on to a pledge to say that they're going to do this work in their environment, in their business community. So that, as I mentioned, if you're trying to save your talent, a lot of folks will want to know, what's your plan? What's your operation? Do I feel isolated in my business? Do I feel isolated as a staffer in this business, that I don't have a voice because my representation isn't there? Or any other number of reasons that someone would have. So what we want to do is build a coalition. We're going to say a quarterly meeting with CEOs to talk about code, diversity, equity, and inclusion. How to work on it, how to train on it, and this is not to the public. It's not going to be results going up open to the public. It's just for your CEO's benefit to say, okay, I see these numbers, this is what I have to work on. But we want to make sure that we're building that rapport. Additionally, the county has agreed to work with us to build a formal pledge wall and art right next to it. I don't know where it's gonna be, but it's probably gonna be possibly on some county-owned location. We're asking that all business leaders come and sign that pledge, and that'll be coming up later this year as well. We're not only focusing on business, but nonprofits and other organizations. So, we've enlisted Representative Byrd, obviously Dave Summers, and actually Leadership Snohomish County has already signed on as partners. So you'll hear some news on this really soon. And then I am going to wrap and then ask for any questions or conversation. I went through that really quickly, but I think it's always cool to have a deeper conversation about some of these things. So, open to conversation.
Did you need somebody to drop a beat?
Yeah, sure. I will close after we talk, if they give me a chance to, with one final spoken word piece. How about that?
Yeah.
It's the new year, might as well try. But any questions on the?
Hi, Garry, I have a couple questions, but I'll just take one right now, and let somebody else go. And I want to address this under advocacy, and your role there. I know you know this, and it wasn't the presentation, I think most of us know it too, but we are looking at continued growth in Snohomish County, right? The pressure's gonna go, keep going for the near future. We don't know how long, but some people say until we basically sell out. In other words, there's nothing left here, no room left, then they're gonna probably put a lot of pressure on Pierce County. But right now, Snohomish County has a very bright future, but unfortunately, we have a huge housing problem, right? You talked about it, and a great example of that. And most of us here in this room who own homes here in Mill Creek have sat back and watched our home values go up astronomically because there's just no bloody supply anywhere. So right now, each of the cities in Snohomish County too are faced with, we need to provide housing for this onslaught of new people coming in. If we don't provide the housing, if we basically say we're sold out, we could stand the risk of losing our federal funding. So we have to do something. And I know that there's a lot of support for developers. I'm kind of peppering my question here, if you don't mind. But there's a lot of support from the government for developers, incentives to develop. There was in low-income Section 8 housing, now affordable housing, but a lot of it's focused on apartments. And there's a real negative, and for those in the room who don't know, I'm obviously from the political side here, so I hear a lot about the negative of apartments. We hear that clearly. Message received. Don't like more apartments. But apartments are the one opportunity that seems to be popping up for more housing because there's no land left to develop. But one of the thoughts I had, and I haven't heard anything, and maybe you could help address this, was I scratched my head thinking, why doesn't the government provide incentives to developers, not for apartments or affordable housing, but for more of a condominium, high-end condominium structured approach to housing that would do two things. One, it provides not apartments but housing, homes that you could purchase. But these homes, we have a strong demand in Mill Creek for downsizing. Unfortunately, nobody wants to downsize. There's no place to downsize to in Mill Creek. So if you sell your 3,000 square foot home, you're probably gonna have to leave Mill Creek, which is not really what you wanna do. So you don't wanna sell your $3,000 home, so you stay there banging around in it when you really don't want to. But there could be a great solution in Seattle and other areas as well. So from an advocacy standpoint, is there any chance that we could provide some pressure on government to provide incentives to developers, not on the apartment side, or maybe continue that, but more on the condominium side? Let's open up this opportunity for people to downsize. Because not only does it give them the opportunity to downsize in your own area, it opens up housing in our area because now they left a home that could add more supply to the marketplace. And it also provides an entry home for a lot of young people. But I think really from the downsizing standpoint, there's a huge market of people who want to downsize who have nowhere to downsize to.
Yeah.
That if you satisfy that, could provide more housing. But we need incentives for the developers. They don't want to build them.
Yeah.
They want to build apartments.
I agree with you that there needs to be an incentive. Kind of what was highlighted in the bio was my work in workforce housing. And what we did was we created, at this time, was called a rural housing program. It was all incentive based. But it also required that the municipality or the community had to have skin in the game. So what we did was we used small and large businesses, investors, banks, locally to build a fund. And we had to only raise $1 million locally as a match. We used the other money, which was a grant request to the state for workforce housing incentives for developers. So once you had that match, you might get potentially a $2 million fund generated. Now you had 3 years to determine how to use that money and how to spend it. You could expand it or lower it, limit it. But the goal was to create units. Now, not one particular version of units, but it could be, as you mentioned, any type of version of units to match the goal of the grant. Now, the developers, they could come in on a 1% interest rate. They could do the pre-construction development piece for funding. They'd have to kick that money back to you as quickly as possible. What we ended up doing was developing 3,000 units in a 2-year period. 3,000, which is not really major, but in Nebraska, that's a big number. And it was all tied to that fund. So I agree that incentives when you're talking about affordability and in workforce housing, which I like to use that term versus affordable housing,
Right.
because it encompasses everyone. And I do believe that that's the goal. And you're saying people who want to downsize, guess what? They may still be in the workforce. So this is a piece to make sure, as I mentioned earlier about business and people, this too is not mutually exclusive. We're talking about all factions of housing. Now, Mill Creek has to be willing to be aggressive in this space, but I think every community in the county has to be able to have skin in the game. Now, we've got ARPA funding that, it's segmented in different ways. There's different requirements to it. But I think if we are creative legislatively and together, we can probably at least say that there needs to be an incentive. Now, I know right now that there is an ADU bill that's out there right now. There's a few other housing incentive bills. So I think we're going down that path, but we probably need to be louder and vocal on that. So I agree.
That'd be very helpful for us.
And we do stand as the group that's willing to help bring everyone together to figure out, brainstorm what that is. I look forward to working with you and others on that front. Any other questions? I don't know how much time I have left, so.
Quick question. Have you heard, or anybody at your office there, about data art and how the rise of the visual and the millennial mind is helping like entrepreneurial growth? Is that on your radar at all?
Yeah, could you say that one
The
more
idea
time?
of data art, taking
Oh, yes.
logical information with artistic presentation,
Mhm.
because I think there's an opportunity to better communicate, whether it's business owners or busy people. I just didn't know if that was on your radar.
It is actually. Next week I'm presenting on art in chambers.
Love it.
And it's tied to the connection between having a visual understanding of how art can actually play into the development of business and entrepreneurship. So
Very cool.
and it's on our radar. We probably need more work in that space, but I'm excited to speak on at least our economic development side of it. And it's one of those national organizations. So he's walking up. It's like,
Yeah, I may as well put your tickets away. I've already got the winning one.
I'm gonna see if they'll let me go ahead and do my parting piece, since I did say I would. That's okay. So he really gave a really cool overview of who I am, but I wanted to highlight a poem that I call Husker or Hustler. You guys want to hear it real quick?
Yeah.
Walk off? Sure. All right. I see a few people like nod. All right. She had me when she was 19, young African-American queen, skin held melanin tight like the river Nile. She started out uptown next door to the Harvard Street hustlers, busters hollering at her backside while she carried her 2 kids to a bus ride. So am I a hustler or a husker? Pops traveled through cocaine surpluses and peacemaker rallies, got smoked by herb near the alley, running through streets like track meets from Cardoza High to the Valley. But this hustling life ain't free, and all the dope fiends would holler, Ricky! See, I come from a long line of slaves who wouldn't stop running for freedom. Got whipped by the whip so bad, the master felt bad in freedom. So am I a hustler or a husker? She called it quits after having 6 kids straight into Tobacco Road. Looked at Henry and said, who needs him? Bled through the world with a heart so big, her 4-foot frame freed them. While the cop held a loaded gun and screamed, Ricky! Who needs him? See, it's a tricky life they led, from rural roots to an urban scene. And you wonder why the American life is a dream. Vera May found herself with sugar and near death, whispered in his ear, I love you, and sent him to college in the heartland with all she had left. I remember the burial as if it never left. Grandpa Hip said, don't take no wooden nickels, but take everything else. Almost missed my flight waiting on an addicted driver. Didn't have any money for luggage. The cop said, son, you're a survivor. So, am I a hustler or a husker? I seldom know the truth, but I know my urban legend helped to free my rural roots. Thank you all.